The metallic corridors of Outpost DRL-9 hummed, with the constant thrum of ventilation systems and the distant rumble of Mount Terrace beneath. Deep within the volcanic mountain that housed the most secure facility in QR Imperium, Space Commander Vex Talon stood before the Central Command console, his four-fingered hands dancing across holographic displays with practiced efficiency. The orange glow of molten lava, visible through reinforced transparasteel windows, cast an ominous light across his scaled features. Security Grid Nominal Commander Lieutenant Zarn reported from her position at the intelligence station. Her voice carried the crisp efficiency that had earned her this posting 3 cycles ago, when the war with the Earth Alliance had reached its peak. All perimeter scans clear. No unauthorized vessels detected within a 50-kilometer radius. Vex nodded his compound eyes, reflecting the myriad lights of the command center. 3 solar cycles had passed since the conflict with the humans had begun, and Outpost DRL-9 had remained inviolate. Built into the heart of an active volcano, protected by energy shields that could withstand planetary bombardment, and staffed by the elite of the QR Imperium military, it was considered the most impregnable fortress in known space. Maintain standard watch protocols. Vex ordered his voice, carrying the authority of someone who had fought in the Centauri campaign and survived the massacre at Proxima Station. The Supreme Council expects nothing less than perfection from this facility. The quantum disruptor weapons stored deep within Mount Terrace represented the culmination of QR Imperium technological supremacy. Each device could tear apart the fundamental structure of matter, itself reducing entire starships to their component atoms in seconds. The humans, with their inferior technology and primitive kinetic weapons, posed little threat to such advanced armaments. Or so they believed. "Sir," Zarn's voice cut through the ambient noise of the command center, carrying an edge of uncertainty that made Vex's scales bristle. "I'm detecting an anomaly at the main gate." Vex turned sharply, his attention focusing on the lieutenant. "Define anomaly." "Sir, our sensors indicate a single organic lifeform has passed through the primary security checkpoint." Zarn's fingers flew over her console, bringing up the security feeds on the main view screen. Human configuration, male approximately 1.8 meters in height. The view screen flickered to life, showing the main entrance to Outpost DRL-9. There, walking casually through what should have been an impenetrable barrier of energy fields and automated defenses, was indeed a human male. He wore simple clothing unremarkable in every way, except for the fact that he was there at all. "How did he get past the defensive grid?" Vex demanded, his voice rising. "The energy barriers should have incinerated any unauthorized personnel before they could take 2 steps." I don't know, sir. The barriers are functioning normally. All systems show green across the board. Yet somehow he simply walked through them." Zarn's confusion was evident in her rapidly blinking secondary eyes. "Our automated weapon systems should have triggered the moment he crossed the perimeter." Vex activated the facility-wide alert system. Klaxons blared throughout the complex as blast doors sealed and security teams mobilized. The red alert lighting cast everything in a hellish glow that seemed fitting given their subterranean location. "Deploy security teams to intercept," he ordered. "Full containment protocols. I want this human captured alive for interrogation." The figure on the screen continued his leisurely stroll through the complex, as if he were taking a tour rather than infiltrating the most secure military installation in QR Imperium space. What was even more disturbing was the complete lack of response from the automated systems that should have been tracking his every movement. "Sir, something's wrong with our security teams," Zarn reported, her voice now carrying a note of genuine alarm. "They're not responding to orders." "What do you mean, not responding?" "I mean they're ignoring direct commands to fire on the intruder. Watch this." She opened a communication channel to Security Team Alpha, positioned directly in the human's path. "Security Team Alpha, you have visual on the target. Open fire." The response came back immediately. "Negative control, no hostile detected." Vex watched in disbelief as the human walked directly past the security team. The QR soldiers stood at attention, their weapons lowered, showing no sign of recognizing the threat that passed within arm's reach of them. "Run a diagnostic on all security systems," Vex ordered his scales, now fully extended in agitation. "Something is interfering with our sensors." "Diagnostics complete, sir. All systems operational. No interference detected." Zarn's voice had taken on a hollow quality. "Sir, the human has reached the weapon storage level." The view screen shifted to show the intruder standing before the massive vault doors that protected the quantum disruptor arsenal. These doors were theoretically impossible to breach without the proper authorization codes, retinal scans, and DNA verification from at least 3 senior officers. They watched in stunned silence as the human placed his hand on the access panel. The massive doors, each weighing several tons and secured by locks that could only be opened by Supreme Council authorization, slowly swung open with a deep, mechanical groan. "This is impossible," Vex breathed. "Those doors are protected by quantum encryption. Even I don't have the authority to open them alone." "Sir, he's accessing the quantum disruptor vault." "How is he—" Zarn stopped mid-sentence as she watched the human casually walk into the chamber containing the most devastating weapons in the QR arsenal. Vex activated the emergency containment protocols. "Seal the facility, deploy chemical warfare agents, lock down all access points, and flood the area with stasis gas." Throughout the complex, blast doors slammed shut, and nerve agent dispensers activated. The atmosphere in the weapon storage level should have become lethal to any organic life within seconds. Yet on the screen, the human showed no signs of distress. He moved among the quantum disruptors as if he were browsing items in a market, occasionally pausing to examine a particular device. "The chemical agents aren't affecting him," Zarn reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Biometric scanners show no change in his vital signs. It's as if the gas isn't even touching him." Vex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the artificial atmosphere of the command center. "Get me a communication link with Supreme Council Command, immediately." As Lieutenant Zarn worked frantically at her console, trying to establish the secure connection, Vex watched the human select one of the quantum disruptors from its housing. The device, roughly the size of a briefcase, but weighing nearly 50 kilograms, seemed to lift effortlessly in the intruder's hands. "Sir, I can't establish contact with Supreme Council. Our communications array is being jammed." "Jammed from where our sensors show no enemy vessels." "The jamming is coming from inside the facility," Zarn interrupted. "The source appears to be the human himself." Vex's mind reeled. A single human, somehow immune to their most advanced security systems, chemical weapons, and energy barriers, was now in possession of a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets. The implications were staggering. The human on the screen looked up directly at the camera as if aware he was being watched. For a moment, Vex could have sworn the man was looking directly at him through the view screen. Then, inexplicably, the human smiled and raised his hand in what appeared to be a greeting. "Sir, he's moving toward the auxiliary exit, the one that leads to the transport bay." Vex watched helplessly as the human walked through the facility carrying the stolen quantum disruptor with casual ease. Security teams he passed continued to ignore him as if he were invisible. Automated systems that should have triggered at his approach remained dormant. "Deploy the hunter-killer drones," Vex ordered desperately. "Everything we have. I don't care if they bring down half the facility." "Sir, the drones are non-responsive. They're not even acknowledging our commands." The human had reached the transport bay. Vex watched in growing horror as the man approached one of their fastest courier vessels, a sleek craft designed for rapid deployment of special forces. He expected to see the human struggle with the ship's security systems, but instead, the vessel's hatch opened immediately upon his approach. "How is he accessing our ships? He doesn't have clearance codes." "Sir, I don't think he needs them. Our systems are treating him as if he has supreme authorization. Higher than yours, higher than anyone's I've seen in the database." The human paused at the ship's entrance and turned back toward the camera one final time. This time, there was no mistaking it. He was looking directly at them. He raised the quantum disruptor slightly, as if in acknowledgement, and then disappeared into the ship. Moments later, the courier vessel powered up and launched, passing through their defensive shields as easily as the human had walked through their energy barriers. "Track that ship," Vex commanded. "Where is he going?" "I'm reading ion trail vectors. He's heading for the Proyon system." The Proyon system. Vex's blood went cold. Proyon contained several uninhabited planets that the QR Imperium used for weapons testing. If the human was heading there. "Get me Grand Admiral Kurvash, now, emergency priority." The communication finally broke through, and the Admiral's stern visage appeared on the screen, his elaborate uniform, indicating he was on the Supreme Council flagship. "Talon, what is the meaning of this breach of protocol? You are not scheduled for." "Admiral A. Human has infiltrated Outpost DRL-9 and stolen a quantum disruptor. He's heading for the Proyon system." The Admiral's expression shifted from annoyance to incredulity to alarm in the space of seconds. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicates the humans possess no technology capable of penetrating our defenses." "Sir, I watched him walk through our energy barriers as if they didn't exist. Our security personnel couldn't see him. Our automated systems treated him as if he had supreme authorization." "You're telling me a single human without support has breached our most secure facility and stolen one of our most devastating weapons?" "Yes, sir, and he's now heading for Proyon." Admiral Kurvash was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. "Monitor the situation. I'm dispatching a battle squadron to intercept. If he attempts to use that weapon..." The communication cut out. Vex turned back to Lieutenant Zarn, who was tracking the stolen ship's progress. "Distance to Proyon," he asked. "At current velocity, he'll reach the system in approximately 2 hours. 2 hours to ponder the impossible. 2 hours to question everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. 2 hours to wonder what would happen when the human reached his destination." Vex spent those hours reviewing every second of security footage, analyzing every sensor reading, trying to understand how their elaborate defenses had been so completely bypassed. The data told the same story over and over. The human had simply ignored their technology, and their technology had ignored him in return. As the 2-hour mark approached, Zarn established a long-range visual link with the Proyon system. The tactical display showed the stolen courier ship entering orbit around Proyon 4, a barren rock of no strategic value. "Sir, I'm detecting energy buildup consistent with quantum disruptor activation." On screen, the view screen showed Proyon 4, a gray and lifeless planet. In orbit, barely visible as a tiny speck, was the stolen courier ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, reality folded in on itself. The quantum disruptor fired its beam invisible, but its effects immediate and absolute. Proyon 4 simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not shattered it, simply wasn't there anymore. Where a planet had orbited moments before, there was now empty space. The gravitational effects rippled outward, disturbing the orbits of the other planets in the system. Vex stared at the screen in shock. He had seen quantum disruptors tested, before had witnessed them tear apart asteroids and disabled starships. But to see an entire planet unmade, wiped from existence as if it had never been. "Get me Supreme Council Command," he ordered quietly. The connection was immediate this time. Supreme Counselor Draz Cole appeared on screen, his ancient features showing signs of barely controlled panic. "Commander Talon, we've received reports of massive gravitational disturbances in the Proyon system. Please confirm the status of our weapons facility." "Sir, a human infiltrator has stolen a quantum disruptor and used it to destroy Proyon 4. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Draz Cole spoke again. "Destroyed." "Not destroyed, sir. Eliminated. The planet no longer exists." Another pause. Then, "Commander, you are to return the stolen weapon immediately." "Sir, the human still has possession of the device. Our battle squadron hasn't reached..." The human has just contacted us directly, Draz Cole interrupted. Through channels that should be impossible for him to access. He's offering terms. Terms. Unconditional withdrawal of all QR Imperium forces from the border sectors. Full reparations for damages inflicted during the war. And a formal apology to the Earth Alliance. Vex felt his world tilting. Sir, surely you're not considering... Commander, do you understand what you've just witnessed? An entire planet erased from existence. Not by a fleet, not by an army, but by a single human who walked through our most advanced defenses, as if they were made of paper. What exactly do you suggest we do against such power? The implications were staggering. If one human could do this, what could their entire civilization accomplish? The war, which had seemed so promising for the QR Imperium, with their technological superiority, had just become a catastrophic mistake. Sir, what are your orders? Stand down all military operations immediately. Begin implementing withdrawal protocols. And Commander... Yes, sir. You're being reassigned. Effective immediately, you are now our cultural attaché to the Earth Alliance. Congratulations, you're about to become very well acquainted with the enemy. The transmission ended, leaving Vex alone with Lieutenant Zarn, in the command center of what had once been considered the most secure facility in the galaxy. Sir, what does this mean for us, for the Imperium? Vex looked at the tactical display still showing the empty space where Proyon 4 had once existed. I think it means we never understood what we were fighting against. We thought we were facing a primitive species with limited technology. Instead, he trailed off, unable to finish the thought. The implications were too vast, too terrifying to fully grasp. 3 weeks later, Vex found himself in an impossibly luxurious restaurant in the heart of New Geneva, the capital of the Earth Alliance. The culture shock had been overwhelming. Humans, it turned out, had built a civilization that valued beauty and comfort alongside efficiency and security. The contrast with QR Imperium military architecture couldn't have been more stark. He was nursing an alien beverage called wine when someone sat down across from him at his table. Vex looked up, prepared to explain that he was waiting for his Earth Alliance liaison, but the words died in his throat. It was him, the human from the security footage. The one who had walked through Outpost DRL-9 like it was a public park. Hello, Commander Talon. The human said, his voice carrying a friendly tone that somehow made everything worse. Mind if I join you? Vex's hand moved instinctively toward where his sidearm would have been, but remembered that he'd been required to surrender all weapons upon entering Earth Alliance space. Who are you? He managed to ask. You can call me Jack. I believe we had a brief encounter at your facility on Terrace. Jack gestured to the waiter for a drink. I hope you don't mind, but I thought it was time we had a proper conversation. You destroyed an entire planet. How is that possible? Jack shrugged, as if erasing celestial bodies was a minor inconvenience. Not destroyed, relocated. Proyon 4 is doing quite well in another dimension, completely intact. I'm not a monster, Commander. Relocated. Vex struggled to process this information. You can manipulate matter at the quantum level to that degree. Among other things, yes. Your quantum disruptors are interesting toys, by the way. Crude but effective. We've been wondering when you'd develop something like that. Humanity, Commander. What did you think, that I was some kind of unique anomaly? A single gifted individual? Jack leaned back in his chair, looking entirely at ease. No, Commander. I'm what humans call perfectly average. The wineglass slipped from Vex's nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor. Around them, human diners glanced over briefly, before returning to their conversations, treating the destruction of valuable property as a minor social faux pas. Every human can do what you did. More or less. Some are better at certain things than others naturally. My sister, for instance, is much better at molecular manipulation than I am. My brother prefers working with energy fields. Different specializations, you understand. Vex felt a profound sense of vertigo that had nothing to do with the wine. Then why? Why did you let us believe you were primitive? Why fight a conventional war? Jack's expression became serious for the first time. Because we hoped you might learn to see us as people, rather than resources to be conquered. War is ugly, Commander. Even when you can end it decisively, there are always consequences. Then why end it now? Why reveal your capabilities? Because you stole a quantum disruptor. Do you know what your military was planning to do with those weapons? The internal communications we intercepted suggested using them against civilian population centers. Jack's voice hardened slightly. That crossed a line. Vex thought about the strategic briefings he'd attended, the discussions about acceptable losses, and demonstration strikes. The human was right. The military leadership had been growing increasingly frustrated with the war's progress, and had begun considering more drastic measures. So this cultural exchange program, what is it really? Jack smiled again, and somehow that expression was more unsettling than his earlier seriousness. Exactly what it appears to be, Commander. A chance for our species to get to know each other better. To understand what we're really dealing with. And what are we dealing with? A species that developed along a very different path than yours. You focused on technology, on external manipulation of the universe. We focused inward on understanding and manipulating the fundamental forces that govern reality itself. Vex absorbed this, his mind reeling with the implications. This changes everything. It changes nothing that matters, Jack corrected. We're still two species sharing the same galaxy. We still need to find a way to coexist. The only difference now is that you understand the true stakes. And if we refuse, if the Imperium decides your power makes you too dangerous to exist, Jack's expression became infinitely sad. Then you'll discover that making a single planet temporarily disappear is the least of our capabilities. But I'd rather not demonstrate that, Commander. I really wouldn't. They sat in silence for several minutes, Vex processing what he'd learned, while Jack sipped his drink with apparent contentment. Why are you telling me this? Vex finally asked. Because someone needs to understand. Someone needs to go back to your people and help them see that this isn't about conquest or surrender. It's about survival for both our species. What do you mean? The galaxy is vast, Commander, and we're not the only ones out here. There are things moving in the dark between stars that make our little territorial dispute look like a children's game. If we're going to survive what's coming, we'll need to be allies, not enemies. Vex felt a chill that went deeper than fear of human power. What's coming? Perhaps that's a conversation for another time. For now, focus on helping your people understand that we're not interested in ruling over them. We just want to be left alone to pursue our own path. And occasionally, Jack's smile returned. We might even help each other out. Jack stood leaving money on the table for his drink. Enjoy your time on Earth, Commander. The cultural exchange program will be educational. And please try the chocolate. It's one of our finest achievements. With that, Jack walked away, disappearing into the crowd of humans, moving through the restaurant. Vex watched him go, noting that no one seemed to pay him any special attention. Just another perfectly average human, capable of rewriting the fundamental laws of physics at will. Vex picked up his wineglass. When had it been replaced, and took a long drink. The liquid burned slightly, but not unpleasantly. Around him, humans continued their conversations about mundane things, their work, their families, their plans for the weekend. None of them seemed aware that they were sharing their city with beings who could unmake planets on a whim. Or perhaps they were aware and simply didn't see it as remarkable. He thought about the quantum disruptor facility back on Terrace, with its elaborate defenses and proud scientists who believed they were creating the ultimate weapons. He thought about the military strategists planning to use those weapons against civilian targets. He thought about his own assumptions about human technological inferiority. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. The war hadn't been won through superior firepower, it had been ended by restraint. The humans had allowed the conflict to continue, not because they couldn't end it, but because they hoped to find a better way to resolve their differences. And now he was expected to return to QR Imperium space and explain this to his people. To convince a militaristic society that their greatest enemies were also potentially their greatest allies. To make them understand that their survival might depend on cooperation with beings they'd spent years trying to exterminate. Vex finished his wine and stood up, leaving his own money on the table. As he walked toward the restaurant's exit, he caught sight of his reflection in a mirror near the door. He looked older, his scales dulled by stress and confusion. The uniform that had once made him feel proud and powerful now seemed like a costume from a primitive era. Outside, the streets of New Geneva bustled with activity. Humans moved about their daily lives, their technology so seamlessly integrated that it was almost invisible. No massive guard posts, no visible weapons, no signs of the military might that had just forced the QR Imperium to surrender unconditionally. He thought about Jack's words regarding other threats in the galaxy. If the humans were this powerful and still concerned about external dangers, what exactly was out there? What could possibly threaten beings who could relocate planets and walk through energy barriers? Vex made his way back to his assigned quarters, his mind already working on how to present this information to his superiors. How do you explain to a species built on military hierarchy and technological advancement that they'd been completely outclassed by beings who treated godlike powers as commonplace abilities? As he walked, he noticed details he'd missed before. The way human architecture seemed to flow rather than dominate the landscape. The absence of visible police or military presence in a major population center. The casual interactions between different types of humans, suggesting a social flexibility that QR Imperium society lacked. Perhaps that was the key. The humans hadn't developed their abilities despite their social structure, they'd developed them because of it. A species that valued individual expression and cooperative problem-solving over rigid hierarchy might naturally evolve toward manipulating reality at the personal level, rather than building better machines. Back in his quarters, Vex sat at the desk provided for his use and began composing his report. How to begin? How to explain that everything the QR Imperium believed about human capabilities was not just wrong, but catastrophically wrong. He started writing, stopped, deleted everything, and started again. The truth was almost too absurd to document. A single human had walked into their most secure facility, ignored all their defenses, stolen their most powerful weapon, and used it to demonstrate capabilities that made their technology look like stone tools. And according to Jack, he was perfectly average. Vex thought about the wine still warming his system and the terrifying casual nature of his conversation with Jack. The human had spoken about relocating planets and surviving galactic threats with the same tone most people use to discuss the weather. He took a breath and began typing again. This time he didn't stop. His report would shake the foundations of QR Imperium society. It would force them to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. It would probably end his career as anything but a diplomatic liaison. But it might also save both their species from something worse than war. As he wrote, Vex found himself thinking about Jack's recommendation to try chocolate. Perhaps tomorrow he would. Perhaps tomorrow he would begin to understand what it truly meant to be human. For now, he had a report to finish and a galaxy to help navigate toward an uncertain future. Outside his window, the lights of New Geneva twinkled like stars, each one representing billions of beings whose true capabilities he was only beginning to comprehend. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. 3 months later, Vex stood before the Supreme Council in the Great Chamber on Keth Prime, the QR Imperium homeworld. His report had been read, analyzed, debated, and ultimately accepted with a kind of reluctant resignation that comes from realizing you've been playing a game where the other side could change the rules at will. Cultural attaché, Grand Admiral Kurvash had called it with bitter irony. More like hostage to their goodwill. But Vex had come to understand something during his time on Earth that he tried to convey to the Council. The humans weren't interested in hostages or dominance. They were genuinely trying to find a way for both species to coexist despite the massive power imbalance between them. The question, he told the assembled council members, is not whether we can match their capabilities. We cannot. The question is whether we can learn to be worthy of their forbearance. Supreme Counselor Draz Kol, older now, and bearing the weight of leading a humbled empire, nodded slowly. And what do you believe it will take to achieve that worthiness, Commander? Vex thought about Jack's words regarding threats in the darkness between stars, about the casual way he'd mentioned that humans might help the QR Imperium survive what was coming, about the chocolate he had indeed tried and found unexpectedly delightful. Humility, he said finally, and an openness to the possibility that our way is not the only way. Perhaps not even the best way. The council chamber fell silent. For a species built on the assumption of their own superiority, it was a hard truth to swallow. Very well, Draz Kol said eventually. Continue your work with the Earth Alliance, Commander. Help us learn to be humble. Vex bowed formally, but inwardly he smiled. The real education was just beginning for both species. As he left the council chamber, Vex received a message on his personal communicator. Earth frequency encrypted with algorithms his species didn't even know existed. Commander, this is Jack. I trust your presentation went well. When you return to Earth, I'd like to introduce you to some colleagues. We've been monitoring some unusual readings from the Andromeda Galaxy, and we could use a tactically minded individual to help us prepare. The vacation from galactic threats is nearly over, I'm afraid. But I think you might find our preparations illuminating. The message ended with coordinates for a location on Earth that didn't appear on any QR Imperium star charts. Vex looked up at the stars, visible through the crystal dome of the council building. Somewhere out there, threats stirred that could challenge even humanity. And somehow, despite everything, he found himself looking forward to facing them alongside his former enemies. The galaxy had become a much larger, more dangerous, and far more interesting place. And for the first time since walking into that restaurant in New Geneva, Vex felt that the QR Imperium might have a future worth fighting for after all. He made his way to the spaceport to catch his transport back to Earth, wondering what exactly the humans considered worthy of their concern, and whether chocolate would still taste as good when the universe revealed its next impossible truth.